So right now, you've been practicing telling stories to yourself. You're getting certain things that annoy you, certain things that excite you, and you're telling pretty compelling tales about stuff that you notice. It's simple, nothing too advanced as of yet. And now you gradually want to work your way up. You want to share stories with people that you know. Keyword or words, people that you know. You don't need to go up to a stranger or sign up for a comedy club and start telling stories on the spot. Instead, find people that you routinely speak to. Open up your phone, see the last couple of people who texted you or called you, call them back and share a story with them. Talk about what happened in your day. We're just focusing on the simplicity because the more that we ground ourselves in the simplicity, the more that we turn our lives into a story, the more that we view ourselves as a character. And once we understand the nuances of us, our desires, our fears, what annoys us, it becomes much easier to articulate the experiences of other characters that we know. And if you're really advanced, from there, you can talk about imaginary characters who you've never met. Just because you've never met them does not mean that they're completely made up. Instead, what eventually begins to happen is that you're taking pieces of the characters that you already articulated for yourself through your life and other characters, and you're assembling something new. That is what I call long division. Right now, call your mom, your dad, your brother, your friend, someone, and go in with the intention of entering the call to just tell one story. Articulate stories with people that you know, and eventually you'll feel comfortable telling stories to strangers. I saw this very interesting post on Facebook a while back that was debating on what's better, grilled cheese or a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And the poll was right down the middle. It was a toss-up. I couldn't believe it because I'm like, what kind of savages would possibly choose grilled cheese over peanut butter and jelly? I love peanut butter and jelly. I thought everyone would love peanut butter and jelly, but on that day, I was mistaken. The reason that I like peanut butter and jelly is because there are two fundamental forces that are in the sandwich that appeals to the senses. There's peanut butter, it's highly creamy, and then there's jelly, which is sweet. You could even say tangy at times. And when you combine the two, that's when you get peanut butter and jelly, a great sandwich. Now imagine if I take away the jelly and someone is just eating a peanut butter sandwich. I know some people that do that, and I think that is nasty. You need both. And likewise with a story, there are certain parts that you need. And one of the things that you need is a conflict. The conflict is the tension. So here's a very simple storytelling formula that you can try. Introduce the conflict, delay the resolution. The reason that this is so simple is because with these two simple variables, you're going to be able to create characters, settings, resolutions, and much more. To give you an example, a couple of years back, there was a teacher of mine who was struggling with mortality. He was in his late 70s and he was fearing that he was going to die. And one day he proofread one of my essays for a college admission, a master's program that I was working on. And I said, Dr. Holt, if you ever need some assistance from me again, then do not hesitate to ask. And that's when he asked for a favor. He wanted to go to Hawaii and climb one of the biggest mountains in Hawaii. And he was battling with this for years. Each time that he went, each time that he chickened out, and he asked me to accompany him up the mountain. The only problem? I'm afraid of heights. So boom, the conflict has been introduced. Now imagine I'm over here telling the story for the next, let's say 20 seconds or so. I'm talking about how I went to Hawaii, how we ate at different spots, how I am, battling my internal dialogue of how I'm going to break the news to him that I'm afraid of heights. This is me delaying the resolution. And this is when the other person, I've got them hooked. They're like, okay, well, what does this guy do? Does he go up the mountain or no? Like, what happens? And this is also known as the law of closure. Whenever we introduce a gap in understanding, the other person just wants to fill it. It's sort of like if I'm just holding my fingers like this in front of you, a part of you just wants to get my two fingers and just connect it. So I'm over here talking for some time, delaying the resolution. And by the end, I'm like, the first time I chickened out. I was like, Dr. Holt, I cannot do it. And this is when this man, the man who had been chickening out for years, started to console me. And once he started to console me, he started to build courage in himself. As he started to build courage in himself, that's when I too felt courageous as well. And we both climbed up the mountain together. Resolution. So you can go ahead and practice with this as well. Introduce a conflict, delay the resolution. As you're working your way up, you're going to notice that there's certain times that a story just sticks. It doesn't matter who you tell the story to, they're either highly curious or they're just laughing nonstop. This is actually how a lot of comedians go from the small stage to the big stage. Whenever they have material, they start to test it out on local comedy shops. And these places normally don't have that much of an audience. It's just for the comedian to get a feel for what's working. And once he has enough data, he's analyzed the data, and he found out what works, that's when he goes to the big stage and he delivers his greatest material. So the more that you're telling stories, take some time to also be a scientist. See what's hitting, see what's not hitting, and every now and then ask some questions. Like, why did this hit the way that it did? Is there something in this experience that touched into other human experiences? How come this story worked with party A, B, C, but it fell so flat with D? The more that you ask yourself questions and the more that you try to answer it, the more that you build your storytelling literacy.